Guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today's video, we're going to talk about eyeshadow palettes. My favorite eyeshadow palettes from the favorite indie brands. I have a lot to talk about, and these are I've only included the palettes that I absolutely love and adore. There are so many more indie brands that I wanted to talk about, but these are like top of the top, creme of the creme. So if you're ready, let's begin. Okay, let's talk about the first shadow, and this is from Gourmande girls. I feel like this palette, it's definitely not like too much of variety, but if you love purples and greens, this palette you will absolutely love. And I'm talking about the Nightshade palette. They released this in 2023, and the color story that they did with this palette was absolutely outstanding. I love the pops of bright yellows, greens, and you know how much I love my purple. So this is no points for guessing. Like, this is definitely my favorite palette from them, and I love it very, very much. This, as well as that Haunted palette, was a close second. If you are buying Gourmande girls for the first time, I highly suggest Haunted palette because they have some beautiful, unique mattes in that palette. Just because I am big on purples, this palette, top notch. Okay, let's talk about Adept Cosmetics. I feel like Adept has come out with a lot of palettes, and there is no palette in my collection that I felt like it is a dud. But this palette stands out by far. The best Adept palette that has ever been created, I feel like, is Heather Austin palette. The quality, the variety, and how beautiful it looks on the eyes. I do not even have words. I love this palette so very much. Again, these have some purple, some green, some oranginess, and the multichromes that are chosen in the palette. I mean, Adept is known for their multichromes and shifty shadows, and this is just outstanding. Okay, let's talk about Bella Beauty bar. This is another brand which I feel like anything that I've tried from the brand I've absolutely loved. I recently ordered the Dead Roses palette. I don't know by the time you're watching this video whether that's landed in my collection or not, but so far whatever I have in my collection, I feel like recently Deinfluenced absolutely has the most beautiful shifty shades, and this is just beautiful. If you are a woman of color, I feel like this palette is just gonna be amazing on you. The shifts are unreal. When you apply it on your eyes, it's so very pretty. I have this shade all across my eyelid. The fieriness that you see is basically that shade. I love this palette so very much, and it's just amazing, like so beautiful, absolutely lovely. Okay, let's talk about Glaminatrix Cosmetics. I feel like Glaminatrix Cosmetics is also another indie brand which I feel like I have no duds from, because the quality with what they make their eyeshadows, I love their shimmers, I love their mattes, I love how beautifully it blends everywhere. I love how beautifully it blends together. Love it, absolutely love it. My favorite so far from the brand is the Rich Romantic palette. Now this palette right now is all mismatched with the other Sugar and Spice palette from them. I've just made my own custom spring palette which I generally use, so it would look a little different, but most of the shades are from this palette, and I love it. I love it so very much. I have this mint shade actually from the Sugar and the Spice palette in my inner corners, and then the rest of the shades I have Intimate on my outer corners, blended it down. I have this on the outer corners. I have a mix and match of a bunch of shades, but I love it. I love this palette so very much. I feel like Rich Romantic, if you love like pinky tones, mauvey tones, like romantic tones but shifty at the same time, Rich Romantic is going to be right up your alley. I really love this palette. Okay, let's talk about It's Bel Cosmetics. It's Bel Cosmetics, again, these brands, I mean, I can be a broken record because I love these brands so very much. It's Bel Cosmetics have created some beautiful shadows. I feel like their shimmers cannot be beaten. Like, these shimmers never crease on me, but I feel like with this palette, they absolutely excelled their matte formula too. I love this palette so very much, and I'm talking about the Pixie Grove palette. This palette, if you love fall tones, this palette is just beautiful. I mean, you can wear this for spring season too, but this is just beautiful, like absolutely beautiful. Let me also tell you, if you missed out on the fall magic palette from Unearthly Cosmetics, the original version of it, except that pink shadow, I feel like everything else is here just a little bit more elevated. I feel like the variety that you can get with this palette is so unreal. The shimmers are just beautiful. It has some iridescent multichromes, it has some shifty shades. The mattes are just perfect. I love it so very much. They're also coming out with a new palette, a cool tone color story palette with like a gray with like grays in it. I don't know, I've not seen the color story as yet. When I'm talking to you guys, I've just seen like the back cover of the palette where these shades are, and it seems like a gray palette. It's like inspired by some kind of a moon. Very excited to see how the inside of the palette looks like. Really excited. Okay, let's talk about Sugar Drizzle. It's been quite some time that I've not tried another Sugar Drizzle palette because I feel like they took a break towards the end of last year, but I still feel like this palette is the best that they've ever created, and I'm talking about the MILF palette. I feel like if you are a green and a purple wearer, this palette you need to have in your collection because this is like a hidden gem in the collection. I love the variety that was chosen in this palette. You will absolutely love it. By the time when I purchased this palette, I was not a big green person, and I was like, okay, it has a lot of greens, but these greens with these purples, breathtaking, stunning, amazing, gorgeous eyeshadows. I love it so very much. I love everything about this palette. There's no doubt in this palette. The shiftiness, the dimension that you get on your eyes is totally unreal. I love this palette. Some of the brands I do have an affiliate code with, and the code is Smithy Sony. I'll leave it in the description box if you want to check like which brands I have the code with, and you can save 10% off. Okay, let's talk about Whatsup Beauty. Whatsup Beauty absolutely knocked my socks off last year with the Dragon Eye palette. This palette, it's so unreal how much I use this for my office. Like, I love this palette for my office. Like, this is subtle, elegant, but outside. It's so gorgeous. Obviously, I love my purple, so this area is totally up my alley. But I love these mattes so very much. These neutral mattes with this amazing shimmer formula. It's elegant on the eyes but sparkly. It's just beautiful. I love the shade Fly. I love Magic. I love this pinky to goldeny shifting shade. Really pretty eyeshadows. I wore this for my anniversary too. You know, when you wear this for your anniversary, how special it is. This is stunning. Okay, let's talk about Huda Beauty. Huda Beauty is like a mainstream brand, right? But I wanted to talk about one palette from Huda Beauty. I have a lot of palettes from her, but I feel like this palette by far is like, I use it so very much, especially if you're not so much into colors. I feel like Naughty Nude still stands up high. I really would recommend this to any person who is big into like neutrals and burgundy tones. This palette is just amazing. It has some beautiful shifty shimmers, dimensional shimmers, and the tones of browns and burgundies in this palette. It's very sexy. It's very sultry on the eyes, and I absolutely love this palette. Now, when you're talking about Huda Beauty, let's also talk about Natasha Denona. And I feel like from the palettes that I have in my collection, this palette still is on number one from Natasha Denona, and I'm talking about my dream palette. Really love the quality of this palette and the shades that were chosen. This is my kind of neutral palette, and I absolutely love it. Like the browns, the peachiness, the mauviness, the multichrome that is inside this palette, the burgundy tones, it's just beautiful. I can get an everyday look, I can get a smoky look, I can get a sultry look. I can get so much of variety with this beautiful palette. I love it. Obviously, an added benefit is that this is magnetic and it has holes in it, so you can customize your palettes. And I often customize my palettes. You can see from the Glaminatrix palette that I did. I love a good magnetic palette where I can like move and shift these shadows, especially when I'm going for traveling. I put all my most beautiful, amazing shifty shadows in one palette, and I take that, and with a basic neutral palette, that's my favorite thing to do. I really love that My Dream palette, okay? Let's talk about Simply Posh Cosmetics. Simply Posh Cosmetics is another brand which I feel like they throw variety in their palette with such a beautiful like twist. I love it so very much. And again, this palette, I've used it tons, again, for office looks, for special looks. I love this palette so very much, and I'm talking about the Cozy Cabin palette. This palette is stunning. I love the neutral side as well as the cool tone side. I feel like this palette is amazing. If I have to change one thing from this palette, I would have changed this green shade to some other shade, just because I feel like these two on my skin tone feels a lot closer on me, but I still love this palette so very much. I love everything. Love the shimmers, love the quality that they have like introduced with this palette. So beautiful, so beautiful. Oh my god, I love you so very much. Let's talk about Unearthly Cosmetics. Oh my god, I didn't even try Unearthly Cosmetics in like 2022, but 2023, I have so many palettes from them. So many palettes from them. Again, none of them are done. I have Don't Be Jelly, I have Fall Magic, I have Sorcerer's Smokes, but by far, my favorite palette from Unearthly is the Sorcerer's Smokes palette. If you don't love colors, don't buy anything else. Go and buy this one. This is so pretty, so elegant on the eyes, this sparkly, the shifty. It is so beautiful and gives so much of variety on your eyes. My favorite shade from this palette is Vervain shade, this one. It is so special on the eyes, you guys. And this shade, this one, oh my god, what is this called? Potent. I have no words to say. I applied that, the only shade I applied on my eyes. It was such a simple look. I did like Prophecy on my crease. I did Intention on my outer corner. I deepened it out with Suit, and I applied Potent all across the eyelid. It was so sparkly, so dimensional, so shifty, to another level. Love this palette. This palette, totally worth buying. Okay, last, certainly not the least, Undiscovered Cosmetics. I do have to talk about it because I feel like, again, this is a brand which I feel like they said, we are not gonna give you any basic things in your collection. We're just gonna give you amazingness in one eyeshadow palette. But again, this is a brand that I tried in 2023, and I have so many palettes from them. I have their Twisted Tea Party palette, I have the Lands of Enchantment palette, I have the Harvest Moon palette, I have the Cold Moon palette. I have so many palettes in my collection, and you know, if you've seen my palette ranking for the last year, one of these palettes was on number 1. I'm not going to tell you if you've not seen that video. I'll link it in the iCards above for you guys. But I feel like if you are starting with Undiscovered Cosmetics and if you love a warm tone color story, you need to try Harvest Moon palette. This is so beautiful. Of course, when you see this palette, you'll feel like everything is so deep and dark. But these mattes on the bottom because I'm holding it the other way. These mattes on the bottom row, it can be blended into such a beautiful transitional shade as well as deepening up shade. These matte do their work for you. And the shimmers. This is something else. It's so pretty. It has some beautiful multi-chromes, holochromes in this palette. The shiftiness is not for a faint of an heart. You will see the shifts when you apply this on your eyes. One shadow is all that you need all across your eyes, and you will be the star of the day. I love this palette so very much. So very much. Yeah, I love it. I actually have Lands of Enchantment on my eyes also in today's look. I love them. These palettes are like on my constant rotation, but if I have to recommend one palette for you guys, if you are a warm tone person, this is amazing. Especially if you love fall color story, this is amazing. If you love a cooler tone color story, check my Cold Moon palette out. Your jaws will be on the floor, I guarantee you. But that's all that I have for today's video. These were my top of the top, creme of the creme palettes in my collection, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed me talking about like my favorite palettes in my collection. If you did like this video, you know what to do. Do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.